Everybody take the seat as we're about to start. If you can kindly settle down. I know there was a conversation that was starting there. I'm sorry to be cutting it short, but thank you. We're about to start. So we will start in the next 3 minutes. If you can just settle down, take your seat.
Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. Only know you've been high when you're feeling low. Only hate the road when you're missing home. Only know you love her when you let her go. And you let her go. Staring at the bottom of your glass, hoping one day you'll make a dream last. The dreams go slow and they go so fast. You see it when you close your eyes. Maybe one day you'll understand why everything you touch surely dies. But you only need the light when it's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. Only know you've been high when you're feeling low. Only hate the road when you're missing home. Only know you love her when you let her go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Sanbonani, Dumelang, Absheni, Goeiemorgen. Hopefully everybody's doing good. Good to be back at the Wanderers and seeing everybody this morning. And I hope you guys had a lovely Heritage Day, because I know I certainly did. Thank you so much for taking the time to be joining us this morning for yet another thought-provoking round-table discussion. Now, Lions Cricket, in partnership with Richfield, is proud to host the regular thought-provoking debates, round-table discussions, industry workshops, conferences, and of course, TED-led-like talks. Now, these discussions are hosted under the hashtag Engage, called the Richfield Thought Leadership Series. Now, the series is also sponsored by the Star newspaper, Spear Wines, Shattered Glass, Konica Minolta Gauteng, as well as the Imperial Wanderers Stadium. Now, my name is Leslie Hopoe, and I've been given such an amazing opportunity to be your program director for this morning. Now, I will be assisted by Zetu Kaka as well as Wanele Mgomezulu, who will monitor all social media boxes, as well as if there's any technical issues, which we hope will not be happening this morning, they'll make sure that they are on top of things. And also, we do have a moderator this morning, and he will then later on introduce our esteemed panelists for today. For now, though, let's kickstart this session, and I will start by recognizing the following. Lions Cricket board members, the Lions Cricket former president, Mr. Jack Madising, who I also saw this morning. Good to see you, Jack. Lions Cricket CEO, Mr. John O'Leaf Wright, his management as well as his staff. Lions Cricket partners, associate partners, sponsors, and service providers. Our Thought Leadership Series naming rights partner, Adam Kelly from Richfield and Richfield team. Today's panelist, Bishop Khoza, who is the servant of the continent, our media partners, esteemed guest, you know what they always say, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning one more time. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all this morning at this iconic multi-purpose venue, the Imperial Wanderers Stadium. Now, before we start, we do have a few rules of engagement that we need to get through and make sure that you adhere to them. Firstly, please make sure that you put on your mask at all times. and I don't think anybody has their mask except for that gentleman there. Yes, we still, well, I'm the one who's speaking, so I need to have it off. So please do have your masks on because, as you know, we're still living in COVID times and we need to adhere to the rules and regulations. And also, there are some sanitizers around, so feel free to use them. Also, there is the POPI Act that compels us to get your consent prior to sharing any images on social media. So if you don't feel comfortable us sharing your images on social media, please just notify either Z2 or 1L. Please make sure that your cell phones are off. This is something that I mention all the time, but someone always has their cell phone on. I remember last time when we had the brand launch, there was a gentleman who had his cell phone on. Please don't be that person. Make sure that your cell phone is on silent. But also would like to hear your thoughts and opinions about everything that will be taking place this morning. So please do interact with us on social media. Would love to hear from you. And our Twitter handle is @LionsCricketSA. And our hashtag for today is #engage. Also know that there is no smoking allowed in the building. And also if you need to use the bathrooms, they are down there on your right. So thank you in advance for adhering to these simple rules of engagement. For now, though, let's get things rolling. If you're wondering why we are gathered here today, why is Lions Cricket Union embarking on a thought-provoking leadership series? Here's why. Now, a few years ago, Lions Cricket embarked on a journey to reimagine its purpose, a purpose not only in sport, but the role it can play within the society it exists. Now, the world around us continues to pose multiple challenges that tend to stifle management thought processes and negate a plethora of opportunities that we are within. Now, management then initiated multiple internal discussions, commissioned various research, interviewed various stakeholders, held multiple conferences and workshops with the aim of stretching old ideas beyond their traditional boundaries and create new perspectives. Now, the Richfield Thought Leadership Series also forms part of enhancing our knowledge base. More importantly, the series serves as a foundation for us as a union and others to expand and innovate, inspiring conversations that would have been otherwise lost or never even had. Now, it's also about unpacking various sorts of discussions which has brought about the need to bring influential South African figures together in an effort that aims to conjure up solutions that ultimately pave the way for increased inclusivity in sport, so it continues to play the important role as a social unifier across the country. Now, our topic for this morning is Gateway to Africa. And to moderate today's panel discussion is my fellow cricketer, Arabile Gumede. He is also an independent financial journalist, and he will briefly unpack today's topic synopsis and welcome our esteemed panelist. Now, before Arabile takes the stage, here with a brief background about who our moderator for today is. Now, Arabile Gumede is a financial journalist with a career of remarkable feats and interrogative work. Now, through the world of money, markets, finance, and economics, he has built his reputation as a leading commentator, reporter, anchor, and writer. Business anchor and reporter for the largest news station in South Africa outside of the national broadcaster, news, views, and reviews on anything and everything. A young accounting geology enthusiast. I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm sure he'll explain it for us. A young accounting geology enthusiast with the ambition known by many to be superlative and vigor to match that of an eighth man in a rugby scrum. Our moderator for today, ladies and gentlemen, is Arabile Gumede. Please do give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much for that, Lesego. I think I need to change the 8th man in a scrum sort of synopsis and just make it the 12th man of a cricket game, right? Just a little bit more fitting considering where we are, especially. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a good morning to you all. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Yep, indeed, Lesego, thank you again for that introduction. The name is Arabile Kumete. And I just want to share what it means to be an accounting geology enthusiast. When the numbers don't make sense, you dig for answers. That is all it means. And so essentially, I've garnered my life in being a failed accountant who realized that things work in a different way elsewhere. And yet the understanding of the same subject I failed in first year, which was Economics 101, I now deal with on a daily basis. How ironic. Speaking about a gateway to Africa is pretty much what I now do for a living. And that is why today's conversation is so significant and really, really awesome to be able to join you and speak about today. So let's talk about what exactly it is we're here for. South Africa has long been heralded then as the gateway to Africa, an appropriate base of operation from which economic connection, particularly to the rest of the continent, can be formed and businesses developed. With its well-developed financial sector, you have infrastructure as well here locally, you have logistics, education, sport, and select industries. South Africa has earned the moniker despite various social, political, as well as economic challenges. To some, the term gateway implies rather the transmission of ideas, people, skills, technology, and goods. Yet, in physical terms, a gateway may also mean provision of access to other regions as well as markets. Gateway countries and companies can be described as providing the connection between the regional as well as the global level of the world economy, acting as the way ideas, people, skill levels, technology, and even goods flow. So these countries and companies take a greater role within their respective regions, emerging just naturally as leaders. Richfield is then just so perfectly positioned as a leading technology and business private higher education institution with national footprint as well as a disruptive online learning platform for distance learnings, which prides itself, should I say, with having achieved quality education at global standards using best practice over 31 years. Richfield also launched the MBA program in 2021 as the first of its kind that focuses on tools, techniques, and even strategies that, of the emerging and disruptive technologies, are vital to manage and drive the transition, particularly into the digital economy. We also, of course, have Imperial, which launched its milestone Gateway to Africa campaign in 2021. The company's strategic intent is to become a one Imperial business, to serve then as the gateway to Africa for its clients, principals, and even customers. Its purpose? Connecting Africa and the world and improving people's lives with access to quality products and services through the provision of integrated market access and logistics solutions in 5 key industries, that being healthcare, consumer, chemicals, automotive, industrial, and commodities. Lions Cricket also prides itself as one of the leading domestic cricket and sporting unions in the country and on the continent. The union manages the world-class cricket and multi-purpose venues that host various world-class sporting legends and world leaders. I could go on with the list. World Cup, IPL, remember that? The Davis Cup, FIFA Soccer World Cup, the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture, greatest one-day cricket game ever. And recently hosted the ODI World Cup winners, England, and that's just to name a few. So let's get to today's topic then. Let's get to the crux of why we're here. What does it mean to be a gateway country and the gateway to Africa? Does South Africa fit this description given their role in international affairs and across the African continent and beyond? Is South Africa still the best entry point for companies? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me then to introduce our panelists for this morning, who will certainly unpack this in different parts, in so many different aspects, that we will hopefully get a much clearer view of where things lie. I will start things off, and hopefully you'll each allow me to read out your CVs, which certainly read longer than mine, because I mean, I'm only 32 years old, whereas your careers span 32 years. Tebe, I'm sorry, that was not to you, I promise. Tebe, my apologies. Let's start off then with Tebe Kalafeng, the founder and chairman of Brand Africa. He's a man who is the preeminent global African thought leader and authoritative voice in branding on the continent. In a distinguished career which started over, correct me now, 25 years. It started at Colgate-Palmolive in New York, USA, and a lauded tenure as Chief Marketing Officer for Nike for Africa, who won over 75 awards in branding and marketing communication globally. I'm still waiting for one award in South Africa. He's also the founder of the award-winning Brand Leadership Group, a Pan-African branding advisory firm that's called Brand Africa, an intergenerational movement to inspire a brand-led agenda to drive Africa's competitiveness, connect Africa, and create a positive image on the continent. Brand Africa's 100, the Africa Best Brands, is widely referenced Pan-African research and ranking of brands in Africa. And Africa Brand Leadership Academy as well, ABLA, to build the capacity for Africa-focused brand leadership. As the first indigenous African chairman of the prestigious Lorries and Financial Mail's Ad Focus Advertising Awards, he championed and led the creative industry's transformation agenda, having been to every country in Africa. And working in over 25 countries, he's widely acknowledged as the foremost advocate for a brand-led African renaissance and for actively influencing visionary organizations and individuals to create the next generation of meaningful brands that will transform the continent's wealth as well as its image. He has written extensively, addressed diverse audiences globally, and even interviewed and quoted widely on all matters regarding brands and intellectual property law in Africa. He has also held directorships, not dictatorships, I promise. I know he's been to every country on the continent, but not dictatorships, particularly in the public and private sector, including the Johannesburg Stock Exchange-listed Cartrack Group and Mercantile Bank, Brand South Africa, Food Corp, Nike South Africa, SA Tourism, and the WWF South Africa. Lesego, not wrestling. He has judged awards on design, branding, and leadership globally and held leadership positions in all significant industry bodies. Born in Kimberley, South Africa, he has been to over 110 countries, every country in Africa, as we've noted, on every continent in the world, highlighted by summiting Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania and Mount Elbrus in Russia. I did one, not the second. Now I'm jealous. The highest mountain in Africa as well as in Europe, and taking a plunge into the coldest waters on the planet in Antarctica. Ikalafeng holds a BSc and MBA degrees from Marquette University in the USA, an LLM, or intellectual property law degree from the University of Turin out in Italy, in collaboration with WIPO in Switzerland, completed executive education at Wits Business School and Harvard Business School in the United States, and is also a chartered marketer. Ladies and gentlemen, Tebe Kalafeng. I promise all of them are this long. Our next guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Isha Mansingh, who is the Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs and Investor Relations at Imperial. Isha is the Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs and Investor Relations, as I said, at the JSE-listed Imperial, responsible for investor relations, ESG and sustainability, internal as well as stakeholder communications, corporate affairs and brand positioning for the group. She's also chairman of Imperial's Global Women's Forum and manages Imperial's partnerships with Lions Cricket and Imperial Wanderers Stadium. Isha currently serves as the co-chairperson of the World Economic Forum's New Champions South Africa Board and a non-executive director and trustee of the Imperial and Motors Community Trust and the Unjani Clinics NPC. Isha is also a founding member of the Investor Relations Society of South Africa, the chairperson of the Integrated Reporting and ESG and Reporting Subcommittee of CFO Forum South Africa, a member of the IFC's Women in Healthcare Working Group, as well as a member of the Integrated Reporting Committee South Africa Working Group. Isha was recognized as one of the top 100 women in business in the world by 2021 by the Global Trade Chamber, chosen as one of Mail and Guardian's 50 Power of Women 2021 and the winner of the Positive Role Model for Listed Companies in Southern Africa Award in the 2021 Accenture Gender Mainstreaming Awards. Isha achieved an honorary doctorate in humanitarianism from Global International Alliance for the vast and far-reaching humanitarian work she undertakes. In addition, she's an award-winning journalist, TV presenter, a mom, and a wife. So there's hope for me yet. Ladies and gentlemen, Isha Mansingh. Our third guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Adam Kelly, Group Sales Director at Richfield. Adam is responsible for the overall group Richfield sales and partnership strategy, formerly held the role of Sales Director and Commercial Operations at SHL, overseeing all financial operations for the Middle East, Africa regions, and Ocean Islands. He was part, rather, should I say, of the Middle East and Africa Exco team, which broadened its management and business experience across the UAE, LUG, and Saudi Arabian territories, in addition to the African markets. Adam graduated with an honors degree in financial management, following which he successfully gained his accreditation with the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, that's CIMA, and is now formally recognized as a Chartered Management Accountant. Adam describes himself then as an outgoing and hardworking individual firmly focused on delivering extraordinary results within his team through effective leadership. Strong work ethic, loyalty, all a testament to his progressive success. Ladies and gentlemen, Adam Kelly. I do. Only failed accountants like Seema. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our fourth guest then. Let's get to our fourth guest. And our fourth guest will note that the last time I stood on this stage, I apparently didn't have socks on. But I promise I did. There were secret socks. That's why nobody knows whether I had them on or not. But nonetheless, Jono Leafright, the Chief Executive Officer of Lions Cricket Union. Jono is a successful entrepreneur who brings innovation and business acumen to the union. Over the course of his career, Jono has established a number of successful sporting and event businesses which have thrived thanks to his strong networking skills and ability to secure corporate partnerships. He is passionate about cricket, which he has been involved in at various levels for almost 20 years. He's a CSA Level 3 coach and was CSA's National Talent Scout for 11 years. He has a long history with the Lions Cricket Union, having coached the Lions under-19 team for the past 11 years, assisted with the coaching of the Lions 2020 team in 2008, and more recently as manager of the Jozi Stars for the inaugural Mzansi Super League in 2018, where the Jozi Stars were crowned champions. As mentioned, he's also been a Cricket South Africa National Under-19 Talent Scout for over a decade, with the likes of Kagiso Rabada, Quinton de Kock, and many other young players having come up through the ranks under his watch. My watch doesn't have anything under it. Internationally, Jono has assisted the Royal Challengers of Bangalore in previous IPLs and Champions Leagues and earned his stripes on the side of many international games. Prior to joining Lions Cricket Union, Jono owned many different companies, one of which was a coaching company that employed over 70 coaches from different backgrounds. He is proud to have retained some of the best coaches for over 10 years, which he attributes to his management style, empathy, as well as his leadership. Now, Jono was also responsible for hosting the biggest inter-primary school sporting event in the country for 16 years and brought large-scale sponsor-backed cricket programs to the townships where over 14,000 children were impacted positively by his vision. He's also has a very good understanding of cricket at school and provincial level, having sat on numerous cricket executive committees in leading roles. The blend between Jono's business acumen, amazing networks, love for cricket, and growing people has already been seen and felt in his short time as the CEO of Lions Cricket. Interesting to note that none of that speaks about how much cricket he played. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, Jono Leafright. All right. I might as well stand in if that's going to be the case. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. Another round of applause just for our panelists. So again, thank you to all of you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And hoping that I can get the sound to be a little bit better. All right. Now, the discussion today really is in trying to understand where we sit on the continent. Just very recently, South Africa was dropped effectively to number 3 when it comes to the amount of foreign direct investment into the continent. And unfortunately, that is not a good figure and a good number to stand at. It's not a good situation, of course. In terms of the biggest economies on the continent, South Africa again sits at number 3. We've just recently revised our GDP and how we measure it, still unfortunately not enough. The last time the likes of Nigeria went and revised their GDP, they had seen an entire industry grow to becoming one of the 5 top biggest, or the biggest industries in the world when it comes to movie making. Nollywood is that big. But how far has South Africa grown? What have we done in the meantime to be able to develop? Unfortunately, yes, we do have the highest unemployment rate of at least 82 countries that are followed by Bloomberg. Our youth unemployment saga is probably the worst in the world as well. And if we don't fix that youth unemployment saga, it does mean that the future is going to be bleak too. Our ports have recently faced a cyber attack, and it does mean that anything that comes into the country has become a problem. So many countries have considered whether Durban port is the port for them to be in anyway. So all of that, and we, as the most industrialized economy on the continent, are slowly but surely losing our place as the leader on the continent. How do we fix it? Tebe, what does it mean then to be a gateway?
Well, thank you, Arabile. I think to be a gateway in English, I guess, means everything comes through you. Yeah. It used to be the situation with South Africa. Speaking about South Africa, because we had the biggest airline.
Yeah.
So it was easier to travel into the rest of the continent through South Africa. We used to have the best infrastructure, still probably do some ways. So it was easier to base your business out of here. It used to be easier to do business in South Africa. So it was easier to use South Africa as a hub for the continent, or for expansion into the rest of the continent. Those have been challenged of late. So to be a gateway really means that it should be the thoroughfare through which people go through to the rest of the continent. Now, a good friend of mine started Africa Leadership University, and he had ALA in South Africa first, the high school, for 10 years. And then he expanded to create Africa Leadership University. And one of the biggest challenges, and he ended up setting it up in Mauritius, which is #1 country to do business in Africa. And we bumped into each other in many places. I said, but why did you not just build onto your ALA experience in South Africa. He says, well, the problem with your country, he's Ghanaian, the problem with your country is it's difficult to get visas for qualified people who wants to work in South Africa. It was difficult to bring students into the country who can study even at an ALA. So if you're going to be the gateway, then it must be easier for people to get through. Because otherwise, what's a gateway if it's all bricked up?
Sure. By that description, have we lost our place as the gateway?
Well, I think we've lost our place. I mean, Ethiopia is building what I think is a $500 million or something billion, I can't remember, probably like a big number, or $5 billion airport.
You have somebody who studied SEMA, so you need to be correct with the numbers.
I need to be correct with our history of muddling numbers.
Also that.
So the number is astronomical. I think it's a $5 billion airport, and they are positioning Ethiopia as the hub for Africa, as the gateway through Africa. Remember, they are in about 48 or so African countries, and they are probably in over 120 countries worldwide. So those who are Googling, we're around there somewhere. So the point is they are truly the new gateway to the continent. So the question then is, how as South Africa do you reposition yourself in this new reality when you only have 6 aeroplanes for South African Airways competing against over 100 for Ethiopian Airways, and recovering from COVID, which has devastated everybody, but which was a great opportunity for Ethiopia, because during COVID they repurposed their fleet to move around medicines around the world, not just for Africa. And of course, they continued to build with a great vision of how you integrate the airline, the whole aviation value chain, and think from a country perspective, how do you use this as a hub? So we've lost that integrated thinking. We've lost the ability to understand what role an AXA plays, an SAA plays, and how we can have a country vision to drive that vision. So we think in silos. People like in Ethiopia, they think collectively.
Yeah.
I saw yesterday, Kenya Airways is merging the Kenya Aviation Authority with the Kenya Airways, because they said we actually need to think. We need to think through the value chain. If you think about South Africa, for example, being a gateway. So I'm maybe speaking too much, but being a gateway does not mean that it's floodgates open.
Yeah.
And that's always been the South African thinking, how we think. We think that being a gateway means we're going to let everybody in. No, matter of fact, what we have done is done just that in the past, which has probably destroyed the South African opportunity. Because when an Emirates or where a British Airways says, can I fly to Cape Town from wherever I am? We say, sure, why not? How much are you going to pay us? If you're going to try that trick in Ethiopia, they're going to say, yes, you can fly into Ethiopia and to the other cities, but only if you land at 3 a.m. in the morning and your connecting flight is at 3:30 a.m. So you're okay, because the priority should be for our airlines, because we need to build our domestic leadership.
Yes.
So the problem with South Africa is, to me, as a South African, and having sat in multiple platforms, is a lack of clear vision of where we want to take the country, or rather inconsistent visions of where we want to take the country. And you know, if you don't have a clear vision, then any path would lead you anywhere.
Yeah. Look, Tebe, I must say though, from that, as scary as that is, it just sounds as well, and probably the scarier part is that now you want to move to Ethiopia, and I'm not sure how comfortable I feel with that either.
Oh, I never said that. I never said. Well, but you remember, I think the beauty of what I've tried to do with my short life is, having been to every country, I've sort of, quote unquote, de-South Africanized my approach to life.
Yes.
And I've approached life in a very in a very holistic Pan-African way. and but not forgetting where I come from, because where I come from gave me the opportunity to be who I am and to travel the journeys that I have.
Sure.
But I look at the issues and the challenges in South Africa with a very objective eye, and by being objective and by reflecting objectively on these issues, we're actually helping the country.
Sure.
The problem is if we want to talk behind closed doors and want to hide our feelings and our views about the country, we are doing a great disservice to the country.
So one of the reasons why you'll find that, and I mean, we've heard this many times, where the notion is, black people are so loud, and we speak in such loud tones, and everyone else is perhaps a little bit more quiet, is because we've been told that if you speak very softly, people think you're talking about them. So you don't want anybody to get misconstrued and think, no. So if I'm talking about you, you must know that I'm actually talking about you. And it's a similar sense here, is that if we are loud enough about ourselves, people know that we're punting our message too. And that is also going to be critical for us moving forward. Isha, this is what Imperial's tried to do then, right? With that launch of Gateway to Africa. It's difficult though, considering now, right? Perhaps this is something you may feel you could have launched a few years ago instead, where, maybe things were a little bit better. Is it a difficult time to do something like this? Do you feel like it's so tough to try and ensure that the message gets through?
So Rabile, and good morning everyone. I think from Imperial's perspective, it was a journey, right? So positioning ourselves and building our scale, building our business, and building our foundation in South Africa, it didn't just start at the launch of the Gateway to Africa campaign. So we've got a long-standing history, as everyone knows, as a listed company in South Africa. But in terms of South Africa specifically as a market, we are the leading logistics player here. So it is very restricting for us to grow further, particularly within logistics. So a few years ago, probably about 2 years ago, we actually took a step back and looked at Imperial and looked at our portfolio, which was really just a conglomerate at the time. We had very strong foundation and roots in South Africa. We started to build businesses outside of South Africa on the African continent, and we also had assets in the UK and in Europe as a diversification, if you want to call it that, because of the risk that was associated with having assets in one single market at the time. And 2 years ago, we looked at the holistic view and thought, well, what do we want to be as Imperial? And what are our core competitive advantages? And to Tebe's earlier point, to look at what we want to do and achieve as a business, not just for Imperial, but for the continent, for our clients, for our principals, for our customers. And at that stage, we decided, well, from a strategic perspective, let's focus on how, by virtue of what we do as a business, we change lives and we provide access to medication and other essential goods and services. Let's focus on the African continent. And we had a very solid base, as I said, in South Africa, but for the various reasons that Tebe outlined already, and because of scale here, we decided to build a business, particularly in something called market access, which effectively is you owning inventory yourself, and it's an order to cash function, and it's a competitive advantage because not many of our peers in South Africa certainly can offer logistics plus market access. Yeah. So we started with the market access model outside of South Africa, and today we've got a footprint in over 20 countries, and what we effectively do is we focus on the consumer and we focus on healthcare, because those are the two most defensive and the two fastest growing markets in Africa. So coming back to your point, and that's just for context, coming back to your point about, why now? Now, from Imperial's perspective, you're looking at consumer and you're looking at healthcare. Yes, we were all impacted by COVID, and yes, there are challenges, but people need food and medication now more than ever, right? And we'd like to see that whenever, there's challenges or there's a pandemic, which nobody could have ever planned for, there's huge opportunity for a business like Imperial. And, we've literally taken this time and we're actually trying to look beyond the pandemic. And I think that's, you have those companies that literally just are in business to survive, but then you have others that take a longer term view, a strategic view, and they thrive. And they look for the opportunity, and that's how they build themselves up through agility for resilience. And that's exactly what Imperial started to do. And I had a few conversations here this morning, and a lot of people mentioned to me, well, there's exciting times for Imperial because you've announced many new acquisitions in some of the most fundamental trade corridors in Africa. And that's what we're trying to do as a business. We're trying to ensure that as Imperial, we are the gateway to Africa for our clients and principals. Because there is the perception that, you know, a lot of companies and multinationals want to be on the African continent, but there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of risk associated with that. But now with Imperial and our established footprint and our established presence, and we've got very strong local relevance in many of our markets, because we've naturally acquired businesses that have developed themselves with over 100-year histories in certain African markets. So because of those expertise, we want to be the option to give access to those clients that want to be in Africa but don't have the expertise to be there. So we carry the risk, we carry the expertise, and through that, it's not just about business for us, but I think through that, we also take a broader approach. I mean, you talked about in your introduction about not just the numbers, right?
Yeah.
And for us, I think it's broader than just doing business in Africa, and it's, you know, it's really very much about how do we as a business, through our networks, also contribute to the development of Africa and you know, and her people. And I think we did a good job in South Africa, but I think to Tebe's earlier point, South Africa, in addition to all the macroeconomic challenges, we've also scored a lot of own goals. But I think what we also need to focus on in South Africa is, you know, not just government and vision, but also aligning our purposes and aligning and strengthening public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
Because government can't do it on their own. So if you want to maintain status as South Africa potentially being that gateway as it was in the past, we need to strengthen these relationships.
How important then would something like the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement be to strengthening those? Because if we take firm responsibility for it, surely that garners the kind of partnerships we're hoping to, yes, as a country, but even as corporates like yourselves, that will begin to create the kind of engagement with parties within countries that will build a more sustainable gateway overall, right?
That's absolutely spot on. And I think with the Africa Free Trade Agreement, I think first of all what it does is that if you look within countries themselves, it actually forces countries to look more towards local manufacturing, which are industries that Africa generally hasn't really focused on because you didn't have the investment. I think it also forces countries to direct their investment into things like development of port and infrastructure, etc., to be able to connect with other African countries. I do think that will take time, but I think collaboration, to your point, is absolutely key. Because if we want to have the successful outcomes of the intent that the free trade agreement was intended for, we're going to have to strengthen those partnerships, we're going to have to strengthen government relations or intergovernment relations across the continent. And you know, when people think Africa, you know, they see it as a continent, but you know, as Tebe would probably know better than the rest of us, every country in Africa is so different, right? I mean, every country's got its own competitive advantages. Every country's got its own limitations. Every country has its own economic growth forecasts and challenges thereof. And I really think that if we need to see the output of the Africa Free Trade Agreement come to the forefront, and I mean, the forecast that I looked at, you only really start to see the benefit of this coming through from 2030 onwards, because there's just so much work to be done in order for us to leverage the outputs and the benefits of the free trade agreement. But I think it starts now, and it starts with those relationships. It starts with deliberate investment in infrastructure. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact, to your earlier point as well, is that because of COVID, it wasn't just South Africa that saw a decline in foreign investment. We've seen that across Africa. And we need that. We need to make sure that we create environments that can encourage foreign investment so that those can be channeled towards infrastructure development, towards ports, to make Africa the continent that then leverages other continents as well, and we're not just seen as a standalone continent as we were in the past, in addition to trying to make countries focus on their development to connect with each other.
Yeah, definitely the continent with the highest level of urbanization, and that will probably continue to happen for quite some time. Adam, the whole point here is that connections are key, right? And as Richfield, you offer kind of the right space for that to happen, to develop the kind of partnerships that are needed, right? To grow not just ourselves, but even the continent a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I mean, Arubile, you go back to Tebe's point about the infrastructure that has been built over many years in South Africa, and it's certainly not depleted. In an education context, we look at it from the regulatory authorities that govern, kind of, we got the Council for Higher Education in South Africa, all private, public and private higher education institutions must conform, and their programs must conform to their tick boxes, if you would like. And that is seen by the African market at very high standards. You look at UCT, you look at UJ, WITS, and as a result of us, those fantastic brands, well-recognized brands on a global level, with us having the same accreditation as private higher education institutions, and the agility, much more agility, to be able to go into other markets within Africa, and the technology to be able to do it very easily helps a lot. We look at COVID and the online of things. We talk about digital acceleration. A lot of companies didn't go online when COVID started. It accelerated to new levels. You look at Takealot's growth over the last 2 years. People didn't start buying off Takealot 2 years ago when COVID started. It was just accelerated by that. And I think us as an educational institution, we were always bricks and mortar. We were campuses. You look at Imperial, they were warehouses, they were trucks. But in terms of their technology offering, and most technology offerings of many companies, it's probably formed over the last 5-6 years, but really accelerated and come to fruition over the last 18 months. And I think with our distance learning platform, we've then been able to go into markets outside of South Africa using the accreditation, the very well recognized accreditation that South African institutions have, and partnering. The key is partnering on the African continent, not trying to parachute and develop your own brand, but understanding trusted partners who understand the market, well recognized within those markets. Trust is a key thing in Africa. Trusting a brand is a key thing in Africa. So to do that takes time. And if you want to grow and be prosperous, you've got to take the long-term approach, like Isha said. You've got to strategize and say, well, who are we going to partner with for long-term success, as opposed to making a quick buck next month with a marketing campaign or a digital marketing campaign, as most companies are doing these days.
Is it too late to start creating that? Because if we're looking towards this long-term view that we're aiming at, the one thing that may be against us now is that because we're feeling like we're losing our spot already, we may create rash decisions and not focus on the long term. That we may do things just in the short term to try and patch a hole here and there. Is it too late for us to start focusing on those long-term goals now?
I think what we forget is that we've got a lot of the infrastructure that's already there.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people think, we've got to start something new, we've got to reinvent the wheel. No. It's just about enhancing the existing infrastructure, taking the expertise that has been spoken about. We're a 31-year-old business. We were formerly PC Training, which a lot of people didn't know before this. We say our logo's changed. We've got 31 years of experience and expertise within the education market. So all it was is leveraging that to add on, not replace. So it was using the technology. In our case, it was technology. In our case, it was things we'd already done and planned to do 5-6 years ago, but obviously at an accelerated pace to remain competitive, not just within the South African market, but within the global market. Yes, we are under threat. We talk about the gateway, and I think you summed it up nicely. In physical terms, you think it's a single entry point. But with the last 18 months, especially in the education landscape, there is no longer a single entry point. Almost those walls have been flattened. You will now see competitors, global competitors, coming into Africa using literally a digital marketing campaign to promote their products. Online learning, it is everything. You can study from anywhere. You can sign up for an online course from anywhere. You don't have to attend a physical institution. You can get a certificate couriered to you once you complete it. So you see it. We see American universities, European universities coming into Africa. This was our space. This was for the South African market to play in. And they all had to previously ask us for permission. They should have been partnering with us to go into Africa to be the gateway. And in our landscape, they're now directly competing against us. So no, it's not too late, because we still have a lot of infrastructure. We have a lot of credibility within the global landscape and the global market to be that firm gateway into Africa, because we've got the experience. And I think, to your point earlier, we need to shout from the rooftops of how good we are at that and how much we know, so that people don't think they can just parachute into a market quite easily, which they're trying to do at the moment, as opposed to taking that longer-term view of partnering with South African companies and African companies to enter the market.
Yeah. Jono, I haven't been able to come to the stadium to watch a Proteas or a Lions game in the longest time. In fortunately not your fault, even though I will blame you just on purpose. But you've then had to figure out another reason, another way to kind of utilize the stadium, right? It sits, and we have so many, white elephants in this country, particularly when it comes to stadiums, and you've then had to say to yourself, well, we're still a leading brand, not just in South Africa, but certainly around the continent too. And it then means you can create this transformation process that many others can then follow, even on the continent, and see that example. Is that for you a key example to how to change things around when it comes to the African continent? Just the transformation of the stadium, for example.
Yeah, Arabella, and good morning to all of you. I think certainly, as mentioned earlier, what COVID's done is just exacerbated and fast-tracked what we all probably intended to do many years ago. I mean, my ex-president is sitting here from Imperial, now senior vice president at Imperial, Jack Madasing. And one of the biggest things we spoke about early on in my journey when I started here at the back end of 2019 is how can we create that recurring income? How can we switch the stadium on? How can we give the community the sense that the light's always on? And not only be a cricket stadium where cricket's played 8 times a year, with one match a year where you have a full capacity stadium, generally being the Pink Day where you're selling out to 27,000 people. So we really had to think differently, and the journey began at the back end of 2019. Certainly, I never envisaged 6 months later COVID to hit and suddenly go from second gear to fifth.
In terms of KPIs, though, you've achieved all of them in 6 months, right? I mean,
exactly.
That was
Exactly.
great.
And certainly from our suite revenue point of view, where people are really purchasing suites to come and watch cricket games for 7-8 times a year, we started to engage with those same stakeholders and say, well, why don't you make it your permanent office space? Why don't you make the Imperial Wanderers your permanent home on a daily basis? A lot of businesses, as we know, moved out of their big office spaces, wanted smaller spaces, wanted more co-working environments, wanted more pods and business incubator environments, which this beautiful stadium was able to offer. And certainly we started to attract those partners. We've now got in the memorial stand only 2 offices left. We've virtually sold out the KPT Taverners. We're moving into the Centenary Pavilion. We've multi-purposed our media center to an educational institution that's using it as a permanent space on a daily basis. We've got a full-time yoga studio now that was up at a shopping center for the past 17 years. Now has chosen the Imperial Wanderers as their home. We've got Uber Eats that's flying in and out here, delivering to the surrounding office parks. So certainly for us, we now believe that we're a stadium that the lights are on. We're attracting new role players and partners, and certainly Imperial's second birthday as the naming rights partner is on the 4th of October. And if we look at where the stadium was 2 years ago to where it is now, it certainly is a living and working stadium. It's a stadium that's breathing energy and life. And certainly we're very excited for the future. And certainly from a gateway position and pure cricket position, South African cricket really is the gateway of cricket into the African continent. Cricket's played in 19 countries across the continent. Outside of South Africa, really Namibia are flying that flag for the African continent. There's been a huge shift in Nigeria and Uganda and Kenya from a growth point of view. The women's game in the continent is expanding at a rapid rate. And there's an MOU between South African Cricket and the International Cricket Council, where really it's our role as South African cricket to expand and grow the game. And certainly through Imperial's partnerships in Africa, through Richfield's partnerships in Africa, through many of our other existing partners' relationships in Africa, we want to, as Lions Cricket, play a role in expanding the game. And certainly as we look to launch Lions International from a brand point of view, we're going to look to take Lions Cricket into those global markets and expand the game, and hopefully through Imperial and Richfield and many other partners be able to do that at a quicker rate and help the International Cricket Council and South African cricket make sure that cricket as a whole expands as a sport on the continent.
I mean, I was about to really talk a little bit more about those partnerships, because that seems to be key here, right? You've taken what you're able to grow and what you have then, which is a strong cricketing base as a country, to then say the rest of the continent needs to be this good. Not better, because they shouldn't beat us, but hopefully really just at a level where they could really be making the top 10 list with regards to listings and the like, right?
If you look at the history Nigeria made at the recent Under-19 World Cup, I mean, they represented, South Africa will please God, always be there representing the African continent. But Nigeria were the African representation at the Under-19 World Cup, beating the likes of Namibia and others to achieve that spot, which has just exploded the game in that part of the world. So really an exciting time for cricket in the continent, an exciting time for us as Imperial Wanderers Stadium.
I must just add as well that the cricket club I play for, Randburg Cricket Club, does have quite a few Nigerian cricket players, just putting it out there. That
What's
we are
amazing is you always seem to throw Randburg Cricket Club whenever you're on the
I
stage.
didn't say Randburg Cricket Club, you did. So, Tebby, let's get back to you. It's still a conversation that's going to need a lot of work, right? We're gonna have to graft hard here and rethink what we think of ourselves on the continent. It's not going to just be, come to us, we'll open the gateway, but it's actually, come to Africa, and everybody else will partner to ensure that the right partner is found for you, right?
Correct, because I think if you go through all the three propositions that have been put forward, even from a cricketing perspective into the rest of the continent, South Africa is no longer what it used to be, where everybody used to think that everything we have is better than everywhere, or is a benchmark.
Yeah.
So because now, as Aisha said earlier, that we've got 55 countries which are different, not better than any other.
Yes.
And every one of them offering a strong proposition, but also each and every one of them saying what makes me different from the rest of them. You look at Rwanda says we're going to use technology perhaps as our competitive advantage. You say, but it's only a country of 10, 12 million people. But it's not even the size of the country that matters, it's the size of the vision. And that's why they've been able to attract the type of opportunities they have. So even from the challenge for us as well that we face as South Africans is also the perceptions of how we are as a country. Remember, one of the things that distinguishes South Africa has always been our humanity, our Ubuntu, quote unquote, how welcoming we are. But we've even lost that as well. Because now the way we've behaved in the recent past, not because it's part of our identity, but perhaps it's part of the frustrations that we've now been rejecting the rest of the continent with our xenophobic attacks and all those, and how we refer to other non-South Africans non-South Africans, the rest of the continent. So what those do, they present a challenge now for when you take the lions into the rest of the continent, when you are going to teach from Richfield into the rest of the continent, because now they're going to say, what makes you think that Richfield is better than Ibadan in Nigeria? And matter of fact, we've got probably more PhDs and more academics than you have, and many of them are Oxford and Harvard graduates. We used to come to South Africa because we couldn't go anywhere else. Or South Africa used to be the thoroughfare because we couldn't go anywhere else. But now we can go anywhere else. Matter of fact, we don't. So when you speak to some of them, for example, speak to friends in West Africa, they're like, it's so difficult to come to your country, even East Africa. So what we do is we'd rather go to Dubai. And from Dubai, we can go anywhere else. So you see, so not only have we lost our position within the continent, but also in terms of being a thoroughfare to the rest of the continent. But people even say, matter of fact, there's an alternative to the continent, and it's called Dubai, if you will. So any business, anyone you can think of here, there's a challenge. The work cut out for South Africa is incredible. So we need to almost get back to the basics. So you speak earlier. Yesterday, I was with the Secretary General of CTA, AFCTA, Wamkele Mene at the Sandton Convention, and I put forward some of these challenges that you brought up to him yesterday, and said, are we going to be able to reach these lofty goals, get 100 billion people out of poverty by 2035, move intra-Africa trade from 18 to 50% by 2030, and so to get all that happening, you need South Africa's engine revving.
Yeah.
And to rev the South African engine, you are going to need a whole lot more than beautiful papers and English and all those, which we do better than anybody in the continent. What I love about so yesterday I had one-on-one with Simon Arnold. He was in London, but we dialed in live and we spoke about him. And he said something interesting yesterday. He said we need to move from promises to deeds. And because the problem with South Africa as well is we get great promises. We're going to create 5 million jobs in 2 hours. We're going to, because you know how we think, we're going to we're going to have 100 industrialists in 3 years. And we couldn't do it in 30 years, but we're going to do it in 3 years now.
Yeah.
So what Simon Arnold said yesterday is so important. He said you need to move from just words to deeds. So we need to measure our impact by what we do. But of course, you also need how we behave as well as South Africans. Because now when you leave the country, I was leaving the airport at Ghana, and the immigration agent, he was about to step and says, "Why do you guys treat our people that way?"
Oh, wow.
And I'm in this country. And I was like, oh my goodness. So he stopped for a minute and he says, "And now you want me to let you into my country." And so those are some of the softer things, because it's not just the hard things, it's the softer things. Because South Africa has had two things about South Africa. We call it South African exceptionalism or South African superiority complex.
Yeah.
So we need to get rid of all those, because there's nothing exceptional about us. We are just different, like every other country is different. And if we go into the rest of the continent with that attitude, then we'll be able to build onto those private PPPs you spoke about, or build partnerships in the rest of the continent. We'll be able to attract people, because now they'll know I'm not going to South Africa because they're exceptional. I'm going to South Africa because they're adding this to what I already have, which is great already.
Yeah, that's so important. Sure. I don't know if you'll actually allow me. I'd actually like to get you guys involved as well in this conversation, and I'm actually going to ask if you have any questions as well. We'll just hopefully grab this mic and try and see if anybody has a question as well. I think it's a great panel, and I'd love to get the opportunity for all of us to engage really on this conversation. It's not just one way. In the meantime, Adam, remaining and keeping that global competitiveness, where you earlier said that it's a space that now is infiltrated by everybody, so you can't just focus on South Africa only either, right? So you now have to expand yourselves and become a more globally competitive brand. How do you do that?
So I think, again, when we look at technology, digital acceleration, that, we've harpened on that, and that's probably increased the competitiveness, because it's now the global market that you're competing against. I think it's not just going online or being online and having an online presence. It's constantly enhancing that and differentiating that. Tebe mentioned we're all different. What is our unique identifier? And again, in an educational context, Richfield, you'll start to see the narrative come out of more than just a degree. So it's effectively what you will come out with when you graduate with the Richfield degree, is like a BSc in information technology, for example, is an IBM skills course in cybersecurity, an AWS skills course, a SEMA skills course in robotics and automation. Who would have thought?
Wow.
So really understanding that when you come out as a graduate, it's not just to be more employable and driving employability, but it's actually driving employment. Because ultimately, with the skill set of just a degree, and more than a degree in the skill set that you come out with, you're far more employable, and you will then be the catalyst to the changing economy, the catalyst to be able to go out into the market and not just participate, but be a thinker, a changer, and ultimately be able to take that and build brand South Africa and contribute to brand Africa in a meaningful way and an impactful way.
Trying to be meaningful in that sense, then, Isha, you guys have an entire head office in South Africa, where some might think, okay, cool, you're a South African company. But you have to change that narrative too, right? That you're not a South African company, you're actually an African partnered, perhaps, company. Do you think that comes with having to communicate that message consistently and then driving out that message as well?
Yeah, Arabile, it's a very interesting one, because people to Tebe's earlier point, because South Africa and, in the way that we think and almost a sense of arrogance that we've had about ourselves, people naturally forget that South Africa is part of Africa.
Yeah.
And that's the narrative we've been trying to
It's
bridge.
always the rest of the continent,
Correct, correct. But I think, for our purposes as a business, we don't forget our roots, because there were times where Africa, or South Africa particularly, has been good to us, and it's helped us establish the base that we do. But I think the only way that you change the narrative is to show people the impact that you have, coming back to the point Andy made earlier. And it doesn't happen overnight. But I think, and from Imperial's perspective, I spoke earlier about our purpose, and just by virtue of what we do, we make a difference to people's lives. And when people across the continent, and whether it's your stakeholders or just the people of the countries in which you operate, when they start to see the tangible difference that you are making as a business, it becomes a bit more about just Imperial as the brand, or Imperial, the South African company. It becomes about Imperial that's contributing to my development in my country. And I think, that was intentionally what our Gateway to Africa campaign intended to achieve, right? To actually make people aware of the value we're creating as a business, as a brand, and broadly to the countries in which we operate. But I also think that, your earlier question to Andy, if I could just, add on to that, to Adam, if I could add on to that, is about the way in which we do business. So, it's no longer just about the services, and as we spoke about earlier, the profit. And I think South African companies, unfortunately, there were more that tried to go into different African countries outside of South Africa, and had egg on their faces, or came out of there doing business in the way that wasn't acceptable in the countries of operation. And I think that when you decide to do business in countries or different countries of operation, especially on the African continent, it is about giving back. And it's about being socially responsible. It's not just about taking the profits and taking the money. And that is a mindset shift. I think it's a fundamental change that business has to make. And I think more broadly, each and every one of us has that responsibility to contribute deliberately towards the development of the continent. And if we don't do that deliberately and make that investment and think differently about just focusing on profits as a business, or what we can bring back to South Africa, I don't think we're going to see that impact or that change happening.
Jono, did you feel the same responsibility when you took over the role? Initially, one would think, okay, I'm taking over the role of, CEO then of Lions, effectively Central Gauteng. That's pretty much where my wheelhouse is, and ensure that partnerships in and around, whether it be with Easterns or Northerns or whatever the case might be, that we're working together. Did you realize the context of having to be a bigger brand, not just in South Africa, but actually on the continent? And did you feel the weight of that responsibility and take it on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've often spoken to Imperial, Richfield, and others about not only our return on investment in what we do together as partners, but the return on influence that we can actually share together, and the lives that we can impact together. And return on influence for us was critical. As I say, when COVID hit in March 2020, we took an internal decision to make sure that we didn't only produce good cricketers, but produce good people that can impact society and change lives. And if you look at our partnerships with a lot of NGOs and other, we've donated in excess of 5 million rands worth of food parcels in the past 15 months. On Heritage Day, this Imperial Wonders Field had multiple braai stands on it for National Braai Day. We cooked 5,000 burgers that were given to our clubs. We partnered with the likes of Ashraful Aid and SAB, where we donated these burgers and drinks to children and got them in the hands of those that were hungry. So those are the types of impacts that we want to make in our community clubs. We do, from a Central Gauteng Lions point of view, really control cricket in the entire district of Joburg, Sedibeng, West Rand, etc. We've got 60-odd community-based clubs that really rely and depend on us as the custodians of cricket. Thousands of children rely on us. We've got 180-odd affiliated schools. And we probably, most definitely, are the biggest union in this country. And when Gauteng trembles, South African cricket trembles. So we really have a role and a responsibility to play from a governance point of view, from a leadership point of view, and making sure that others are always catching up to us. I promised Isha and the Imperial team that no one will ever get ahead of us, but that we'll keep leading the way. And our old slogan was lead the charge, and now it's really being the pride of Josie, and hopefully in the years ahead, the pride of Africa. in what we're able to do, not only from a return on investment to our partners and our stakeholders,
Yeah.
but the influence that we give society and the lives that we change. I mean, many don't even know that we've got hundreds of children that we put through bursaries and education. Through the partnerships with Richfield, we've got staff members that are about to go on MBAs, lives that are being enriched through education. We've got children that are sitting at St. Stithians that come out the township of Kagiso that are now in St. Stithians and some of this country's top education institutions. We've got players that have exited cricket but have gone on to become good fathers and chefs and accountants and doctors and others. So cricket has always been that base and sport's been that base, and it's the unifying force. I mean, you mentioned the township program we ran in the Alexander Township.
Yeah.
I mean, human movement, a simple thing like physical education, is not in our township schools. But
Yes.
what we did is reintroduce it through the Department of Education. We used cricket as the medium with which we started to get the girls and the boys playing sport in these township schools again. I mean, we were coaching on corridors because they didn't have fields. We used car parks because there were no other places to play. And the one young man that we discovered was a young man, Sipho, out of a school in Alexander. When he was 10, never touched a cricket ball, never even understood what cricket was about. Started to coach him and groom him and mentor him. Through a 3-year process, he's now sitting on a full bursary at Jeppe, playing provincial cricket for this province. And who knows, may even represent this country one day. So, and to Tebe's point, and Isha and Adam, I think South Africa has a lot of good stories to tell.
Yeah.
We need to tell those good stories, and that's what we've really, through our great marketing commercial head, Wanele, and my team here has really started to tell good stories and the impact that cricket and sport and partnerships and influencing lives in a meaningful way can make. And it's been a journey over the past 18 months, but I still am a proud South African and still believe that this country's got a lot to offer, not only this continent, but this world.
Yeah, certainly still a lot to remain positive about, as we've always been as a country too, right? Resilient, but also positive. Don't know if there are any sort of questions from yourselves as well here. If you'd like to get involved in this conversation, please, you can set those out now. If there's anybody with a question, if you could just raise your hand, Wanele will just hand you a microphone if there's any thoughts. No? So I'm allowed to continue speaking? I can do it all day. Please also just share your name with us so we can also address you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ntati Sivelagazi. I'm from DNG Energy. Thanks, Arabile, for hard-hitting engagements this morning. My question is to Tebe, and it comes from the emotional side of things. We know we serve functional needs, and today, the way I'm feeling, I just need to ask you, are you being heard? I know that you engage a lot with people, with relevant people in the presidency, where you talk about these things that you are discussing this morning. Are you being heard? Is there hope for South Africa? What is the problem? Why are we not getting there? It's been years and years and years of trying, of engaging, of educating, but I'm sitting here feeling despondent. So I just want to say to you, are you being heard, and is there hope? And from Richfield, are we engaging with the youth? I see that our youth are feeling like I am now. Then we're not engaging enough with them. We're not having conversations like this with them. What efforts are you guys making to let our youth to be part of this, of these sessions, so that when we as a business try and bring up new products into the South African or the African market, they are leaders of tomorrow. How do we make sure that they are motivated? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sure. Tebe?
Are we being heard? And you asked, is there hope for South Africa? The hope for South Africa is in South Africans. It's in the people of South Africa. But the challenge that we have with South African people, with us as people, is we've got short memory spans. We are headline driven. So we get excited about something, whatever it is, or many of the headline issues we've had in this country, but we move on very quickly. As a result, we don't hold anybody accountable. And until we can hold the people accountable that we put in power, this country will not move anywhere. And until South Africans can hold a conversation for more than one headline, beyond the headline, we're not going to move any further. What we must remember is something I heard yesterday or 2 days ago. Somebody sent me a clip, and I thought, what an amazing way to look at it. Because what you're speaking about the American elections, about American leaders, and he was saying that there is absolutely nothing wrong with the people that are in power in America. I want to paraphrase it to South Africa. It says there's absolutely nothing wrong with the people that we have in power in South Africa, across all political parties. What is wrong is in the people of South Africa, because the people of South Africa are the ones who have created the people that are in power, because they come from us. So if we go on and say that, so it's because if we go on and say that, but we have truly got poor leaders. Well, we are the poor ones because we created them. They are our fathers, they are our children. I was at a hair salon the other day cutting hair, and I was with one political enthusiast. Maybe he's inside the political party somewhere. And he says, and we're talking about this, and he says to me, don't give up hope on us, Tebe, because we must look into the next generation. I said, I don't know what next generation you're talking about. He says, no, the ones who are coming out of matric. I said, but they live with you. They see how you live. They see what you condone. They see you driving big cars and you only go to work for 2 hours. They see you doing all these things. How do you expect them, when they become your age, to behave differently? Because they say, if my father took shortcuts to get everything in life and was unaccountable and was unashamed in how he behaved, why should I do anything different if I want to continue the same lifestyle? So are we being heard? We are the ones who must create the noise to be heard. We must hold people accountable, and we must hold a conversation beyond the headline. So until then, we're going to be the same people, because among us here, one of us is going to be a councillor, a mayor, and a head of a party or a president somewhere. And they are going to carry with them the same things they've condoned around them. Because you see, unfortunately, they say absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because when we get into power, we are going to love what power does for us. And we are going to continue the status quo. So you can listen to all of them now pontificating with big manifestos and all those things. Words, not deeds.
It would be very interesting to see a RDP house out in Sandton, I must just add. But at the same time, you're quite right. It's weird because you speak about an industry, Isha, you may know this to some extent, where as a journalist, you just have to keep moving on to the next story because it's the most important thing. But then you realize a few months down the line, you're like, but wait. We still actually haven't dealt with July's unrest and how that is still hurting us.
You've been moving from story to story.
100%.
You have not been solving problems.
Yeah.
And that's a problem in South Africa. We have lots of stories in which create lots of problems, and nobody's solving the problems.
Yeah.
But they love us, politicians love us as South Africans because we keep it moving.
Sure.
That's how we are.
Adam, the other question was to you, and whether the ones that we want to lead this next generation are part of the conversations. Are we just saying, no, this is the big people's table, and this is not your place?
Certainly not. I mean, in terms of education, it will paint the picture. I mean, we know that educated people and giving access to education is so important, because they will be the catalyst to change in the future. And that's why our prime, if we look at our key objectives, it's around accessibility, affordability, because ultimately you can then get a quality education to as many people as possible. And this gets involved, we know they do, the sponsorship of bursaries, whether it be from a regulatory perspective or not, they do get involved and they make that happen. But that's at a person's life when they've got to make a decision where they want to study. That's at often the point of school leaver level when they're 18. In terms of the conversations that go long before that, I think we were struck a couple of years back. We went into the townships and we started to understand what the aspirations are of the youth. And we chatted to a young boy and we said to him, obviously you've got aspirations to study one day. And we were expecting him to say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer. And guess what his answer to us was? I want to be a taxi owner. Because the person with the big car is the taxi owner. He doesn't want to study. He wants to get through school. Even if he drops out, that's fine. So he'll start washing the taxi. He'll start to make enough money, and then he'll become good enough, close enough to become a taxi driver. He'll earn enough money by becoming a taxi driver, then to buy his own taxi. And once he's bought one and he's made money off one, he'll buy a second one and a third one and a fourth one. And that was his aspiration. And he articulated it so well that you almost couldn't argue. He said, well, you don't need an education then because you've got it all planned out. But that is because not enough of us are talking to the youth. So in terms of what we're doing as an educational institution, I mean, I'm proud to say we've got our partners, Prime Stars here. I mean, they've got in touch with over almost 1 million students that have come through their programs. And their programs are about educating young students, youngsters, on the power of education, giving them access to education. I mean, we look at, Martin, you can say it's almost 1 million students that have gone through cinemas in South Africa over the last 10 years that have been taught and helped with maths and science, the key skills required to give them the opportunity to further their studies into the higher education space. And having those conversations, specific conversations about entrepreneurship, around seeing that the power of entrepreneurship, not in terms of washing a taxi, driving a taxi, and then owning a taxi, but in terms of starting your own business within your community and how that can thrive and how that can create small businesses, and those small businesses, a collective, can have a huge impact on the economy. So yes, we take it upon ourselves to partner with guys like Prime Stars who have been exceptionally impactful. It's not our core competency, unfortunately, but we ensure that we have a pipeline of youngsters that are really aspire to get an education, aspire to be forward thinkers of the future, and ultimately, again, create an impact.
So let's disagree with him for a second. Because we can educate you all you want. You are still not going to be able to change this continent or the country. And I'll explain to you. You know all the political parties in South Africa. Some of them have got what? Doctorates? Some of them have got masters. A lot of them,
honorary doctorates.
No, some of them have got doctorates from VETS and from any other institutions.
Sure.
All those, we know them all by name. And many of them have got master's degrees. The problem in South Africa is not so much the education. Because, as you said, 1 million people, some of them go to Richfield, go to St. Stephen's, go to all those. There's tons of them. Some of them, they work for crooked fathers and mothers who are able to send them to Michael House, to Hilton, and to St. Stephen's. That's not the problem. The problem is the set of values that define who they are and how they behave. Sure. So there is a role for education, but if education comes into crap, you are going to become crap anyway. So we need to rethink who we are as a people, what defines us, what guides how we behave and how we work and how we think. And the second to that, once you have a clear set of values that we all believe in terms, this is what it means to be a South African. And then to also have a purposeful vision in terms of, why do I exist? What difference am I going to make in this world? Once you have those clear, education becomes a cherry on top, because now you can use education for a greater good. But otherwise, if education just comes, it's like not taking a shower and wearing new clothes. You still smell. So what we need to do is we need to redefine, go back to who we are as a people and our values. So I'm not disagreeing with education. I mean, I run a school as well. So the point is, where is that school? What's the school going to do to the people that you're educating?
And sorry, Yesha, I mean, that's the output, to your point. The input is those key drivers, the values, the environment that they're exposed to. And we got to make sure, as not just educational institutions, but as corporate South Africa, as South African citizens, that we constantly invest in that. And don't take for granted that the values that we aspire to have, that we talk about, that we have as a country, they exist in every home in South Africa. And I think there's a lot of people, and I know of in this room, that already take that to heart and are addressing those key issues to make sure that the upbringing that we want South Africans to have, the values that we want them to be exposed to, they will get access to, even if it's not in their home environment, for example.
But I think just dare I mention the elephant in the room, though, is the impact of social media. And I think we all, I mean, especially the parents or the households, try to instill those values. But you spoke earlier about we don't ever make it. It's always about the next headline and not solving problems. But then if you look at the narrative and the propaganda that's fed through social media, everyone thinks they're an expert on South Africa or on the economy or on something. So I think that also adds the added complexity to change that narrative and to change the mindset and to build nations again, unfortunately.
Yeah, Ravila, to Tebo's point, I certainly don't think there's a leader issue in South Africa. I think there's a leadership issue in South Africa. And I think that leadership issue is really about instilling those values. To Tebo's point, actions speak louder than words. And that's certainly for us, from a Lions cricket point of view and through our partners. I mean, we launched the I'm the Future campaign on this very field of the Imperial Wanderers only a couple of months ago, where we created a partnership with the MMC of Development Planning. And we started to engage with the youth around leveling the playing fields, around explaining that you are the future. And unless we get the values intrinsically inside you, and to Tebo's point, what being South African truly means, we're not going to change the needle and move it forward. I also just want to pause at this point just very quickly. Natisi and the DNG team, you're not on this back wall, ladies and gents. I just want to welcome DNG Energy to the Lions family just very quickly. We're about to sign an agreement, so they will be on this back wall very soon. As a proud partner of Lions Cricket, I know DNG do a lot of work with Masana, one of our other partners, and Imperial themselves. So to the DNG family, hopefully we can make these meaningful differences together moving forward.
Yeah, congratulations on that one. We do have another question as well.
Thank you. It's more a suggestion. Firstly, I just want to say my company, Prime Stars, has started working very closely with Richfield. We're really delighted with the experience, and we hope it's going to last a long time. To Tebe, I've known you since you were a kid. You haven't changed at all. But I do want to disagree with you when you talk about education. Education is more than teaching maths and science. It's about values, it's about ethics, it's about identity. It's a whole set of really important issues that young people have to face. I'll give you an example. South Africa is faced with 4 pandemics. There's COVID, there's climate change, there's unemployment, but there's a 4th pandemic. There's patriarchy and gender-based violence, and we have to redefine masculinity, in fact, in this country. And that's part of education. I mean, our young people don't even know what climate change is. And that's part of education. Our young people don't know that there are opportunities in the green economy, and that's education. So when we talk about education, we have to redefine education in this country. Yes. We took 1 million kids by 2019, and we showed them that STEM subjects are important for the 4th industrial revolution. And we try and get them to pass, not at 30% like our government is happy with, but at 80 and 90%. And that's discipline. So education's about discipline, it's about ethics, it's about values, it's about principles, and that's what we try and impart to young people. And I think that's very important, because in South Africa today, we have to reinstate discipline. We have to make young people aware that it's more than just getting up and going to school. It's getting up and going to school and getting 80 and 90% in their exams and working very closely with them and following through. Sure. And as your point, where I do agree with you, Tebe, it's about deeds, not words. And education is about deeds and not words. It's about stopping corruption in this country. It's about making things work again. And it's about truly being the gateway to Africa.
But Martin, you're not disagreeing with me. You're restating exactly what I said. I was merely extending the conversation from a Richfield perspective as a private education provider, that you need more than the structured education that we're talking about.
More than just the words.
More than, yes, because that's just As we know, you can get a PhD just memorizing or cutting and pasting on the internet and changing the full stops. Nobody will know it then it becomes yours. So are you with me? So I was expanding beyond that. I was going to exact same thing that you're doing. So I probably should have used the word we need to redefine education, and we perhaps need to make education holistic. Maybe that's what I should have said. But we're on the same page. We need to redefine our values.
Yeah.
And I like the second thing that you said, which is we also need to not redefine, but we also need to clarify our identity. So one of the things that I always say around the continent is if we don't have a clear sense of values and a clear sense of identity, it's like a tree without roots, because very soon that tree will just fall, or weak roots rather, that tree will just fall. So part of our job is to, and what upbringing and what incubations and what many of these other mentorships and all those things do, and parenting, what all those do is they help to build the roots. They help to build the roots so that when the tree grows from a degree, it grows from an exposure, from an internship, it grows off of very, very good roots. We're on the same page, Martin. We haven't disagreed in 30 years.
As old as Richfield is. I'm going to take another question or two. We are just running out of time, so I'm just going to ask if the next sort of set can just be kept
Arabella,
brief.
I think Tebe and Martin could form their political party, and I'll vote for them.
Done. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Abna Musase. I'm a government bureaucrat. I'm a social activist. I'm also an international relations practitioner. So that's the summary of the person that I am.
Not as long as the one I had to read here. No?
Yeah. So I think our society, the problem is that we've got what is called the epidemic of disconnection. When the students are protesting, every one of us in society treat it as their problem.
Sure.
When the workers are protesting, we say it's a workers' thing, and we all go around doing our normal business. When the people are protesting about electricity in the townships, we also they are owing a lot of money. We do not join hands as society and see how do we resolve the problems of the country. So I think that's the fundamental problem that faces South Africa, what I call the epidemic of disconnection. The question that we therefore need to ask is, how do we build a citizenry with a critical social, economic, and political consciousness at the same time? Because without inculcating those values, as you said, Tebe, we will not be able to achieve the best out of our society. Yes, education plays a role, but where I come from, we say a revolutionary theory without revolutionary practice is dead, and vice versa. It's a dialectic. So we need to make sure that we really come together as society. Politics is just a catalyst to entrench democratic ethos. You will never avoid it. But the most important role is the role that society plays. We used to have, in the olden days, what we call organs of people's power. And that's how we drove our country to democracy today. Because every corner was a site of struggle for us to achieve the highest aim of our society. So how do we modernize the concept of the organs of people's power in today's context? Thank you.
Sure. It's really, really great. At the same time, if you don't mind, I'm going to just grab the last comment as well at the same time, and then we'll hopefully discuss both very quickly.
Okay, let me go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ramupi. The surname is Tati. I hear all comments made. Me too, I'd like to say my comment. I want to believe, or I understand that the South Africa I knew as a young fellow then it's no longer existing. Truly, we belong to the continent, to the world. It's one village today. But to my dismay, I'm a founder of a university called AUSA, whereby till today, I'm still struggling to get the license, the operational license to run that university. And that university has a sister company which is able to can employ 270,000 people, the uneducated, semi-educated, fully educated. In 9 provinces, we can employ 30,000 people at a go. That's one. Now, the issue is foreign universities, they do operate here, but the government of the day does not give me the license because I'm black and ugly and born in Alex. No one from Alex, according to government, can come with a better idea. We have raised 38 billion rand from the US. As we speak today, we are supposed to be going to the US to meet the Black Caucus on the progress of AUSA, but we're not going because we do not have the license. So would you tell me that we are in a better South Africa or not? I strongly believe that the South Africa we're in today is deep in the sewerage, very deep. Before it can come out to the bucket seat where we sit, it will be too long. Because the government claims that they want to work with the private sector, whereas they do not do that. AUSA by itself, it can secure land to be owned by the university and the people of the relevant areas, which solves the land issue. Because you cannot give somebody who does not know farming the land because he's black. We're not going to win. Sure. And not only that, I'm a founder of a company called Rail Train Express. I'm busy with Pras and Transnet. It took me over 12 years for them to acknowledge to give me a station where I can run my own trains, which will be going to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Botswana, and Zambia. I have signed with those countries, but I can tell you that today, I'm one of the poor people who cannot afford school fees for my child because of the government of the day. Who am I? I'm nothing. Because why? I don't succumb to giving an envelope for corruption. So this country is going far nowhere slowly. Far nowhere slowly. Crime will be prime all over because people like us will be turned into shooting others. We are very much angry with the given circumstances of the day. Yeah. We're talking of the fifth economy. I, for one, Mr. Tsatsi, I'm in the position to employ 270,000 people. It's not a dream, it's on paper, there's money to it, but a operational license, it's not being given. So we shouldn't be lying to ourselves, talking about those of PhD degrees and that and that and that. Those do not work for us because they hire a director to direct a director to manage the director and the director to sign for the director and the director for the direction chief and the direction. You understand? So where are we going? Yeah. Where are we going as a nation? Sure. You understand? And at the end of the day, me as a black, I must blame a white and a white must blame a black. That's the end results of this government. Yeah. I thank you.
Look, you make very relevant points, and I think for one, let's not ignore where we sit as a country, where we come from as a country as well, and where those deep-rooted issues can certainly affect how far we can go, how far we can develop. And it does mean that there needs to be answers for those things too. It's not to say that he's the only one feeling that. And it's not just a color spectrum issue, I believe. I'm not saying it isn't, I'm saying it's not only, right? But there certainly can be solutions to these things, but it goes back to holding people accountable and making that noise. Just another final thought over here before we close out. I'm so sorry. We were supposed to close at 10:30, and now we've gotten the best discussion out of all of this. Everything you guys said earlier is useless now. So all of this was the gem that we actually wanted, right? So I'm going to ask both of you to then end off with our closing comments, and we're going to end it there, hopefully.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. My name is Maureen from Richfield. So with all the frustrations, and just to add to the list of the pandemics that you were talking about, is mental wellness and a topic that is not really spoken about. I mean, at Richfield, we've started going into companies and really tackling that topic of mental wellness and holistic wellness, which is very important. So I do feel that it is part of the the challenge right now and a big problem in moving us forward. And in all our respective spaces, it should be something that we all try to work together to resolve.
Very finally, as well over on that side, sir, please.
Good morning. My name is Moses. I'm also from Richfield.
Sure, you planted them.
They're educated.
You planted them.
We
planted them.
I can tell you we did not talk that we will have questions. But listening to the panel, I actually made me understand that we have lost our own identity as a nation. But the problem is, as the topic says, gateway to Africa. Why would we then want to go and to different territories if you don't know who we are?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we first start to find who we are, redefine our own values, our own identity, before we can go out and say, we are from South Africa and this is what we can do? Sure. If we can do that here in South Africa. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we need to solve ourselves first before we get out to the rest of the continent, the rest of the world? Isha, maybe if I start with you?
Yeah, so I think, there's a saying that says we are the change we've been waiting for. And, coming back to each and every one of us, change starts with us. So, the value system, the mindset, our contribution. What can I do as Isha to contribute to South Africa's identity? Yeah. So I think, we can always put the blame game on the powers that may be. But I think, first of all, we can, and we should start with ourselves. But secondly, as we said earlier, South Africa does have, there's a lot of positives to this country that we shouldn't ignore as well. Yeah. So yes, there's a lot of work to do in terms of developing our identity. Yeah. But at the same time, we also, the world is ever changing and ever moving, right? So the longer we pause to develop our identity or build on it or whatever it is, we get left behind. So I think it's a hybrid. We have to all play our part to define who we are as South Africans and what our competitive advantage is and how we can contribute. But at the same time, we also need to keep track of what's going on in the world and how we can contribute to the bigger betterment of mankind.
Yeah. Adam, your thoughts as well? Richfield has given a sense and a view, but we certainly want yours too.
I think Isha's hit the nail on the head there. We spoke earlier about public-private partnerships and the role that, we say South Africa needs to find its identity, absolutely. But there's corporate South Africa, there's companies that have already found that identity. Imperial spoke about that journey. They established themselves within the South African market as the leader, and ultimately that was then the catalyst for them to launch into Africa. We look at the role that not only just the corporate sector and the public sector play, we look at the role sporting teams play in that as well. That's brand South Africa that really kind of takes us to a global brand. You look at what the rugby team's done over the last 2 years. You look what the cricket teams continue to do over the last decade. And ultimately that all enhances brand South Africa. And if we use all of these corporate brands, no one will probably know they look at the success of Tencent. And a Chinese company say, wow, that's unbelievable. But they don't realize that it was the backing of Naspers that really got them there. And that was a South African company. Those were South African minds. So it's really important that we talk about this and we use all of the pieces of the South African puzzle to build this, and not simply look at kind of the PR agency for government to do it, and ultimately tell the success stories of the government departments, but really look at the success stories of South Africa, the private sector, and then ultimately the public sector as well. And there's a lot of wins. There are plenty of wins. So we've spoken about some of them on stage today, but there are so many more that we can bring into that conversation. And I think if we talk about those wins as a collective, we'll be loud enough and we'll have that presence on a global stage that we aspire to want.
Yeah, John, or should you just be focusing on what you're good at, do that excellently so that you're able to bring in everybody on that success, or is there more?
Yeah, there's so much more, Arabella, and just hearing the panel and the frustration from some of the floor just really resonates and hits home with, we did a culture workshop internally, and one of the biggest words that came out of that was trust. And I think to Tebe's point, I was privileged and blessed enough to walk a long journey with the former Auditor General of this country, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, before he passed away. In fact, I spoke at his memorial service. And one of the biggest things Kimi did was hold people accountable as the Auditor General, or at least attempt to, with a lot of noise from the outside, a lot of fear from the outside with his life and his family's life threatened, but he had to make sure that he continued to walk the journey to hold those around him accountable. And I think it's all of us in this room, it's our responsibility to do that in our own communities, in our own circles, in our own households. We spoke about gender-based violence, and one of the biggest things we did as Lions Cricket last season was really own the End Femicide Now campaign as a professional sporting institution. And when you've got the likes of Gigisa Rabada, Temba Bavuma standing up saying enough is enough, men don't need to do this, men don't need to behave like this, it resonates through society. And I think certainly for us as Lions Cricket and brand cricket within this country, we need to speak out and we need to make sure our voices are heard more so that we can use the role models that we've got amongst us to impact and change society. Because if we don't do it, we can't wait for the person next to us to do it. I mean, I've got a young white 7-year-old son, and asked him to have a play date a couple of weekends ago. We had a little jumping castle in the garden, and I said, invite 3 of your mates to come over. He invited 2 Muslim boys and a black domestic worker's son. And it's up to me as his father to embrace that. Because I know many of my fellow white South African friends would not have embraced that. And it's up to me as a white South African to educate my fellow white South African friends that we are one country, that we are this rainbow nation, that I believe we all got the vision to grow. And my son had the best day of his life. And that was his choice. But I, as a dad, could have turned around, how can you have a black domestic worker's son? And how can you invite 2 Muslims? Where's your white friends? That could have been my choice. But at the end of the day, it was what he wanted. And I was super proud of him for that, because some of my best friends are black. And I think as a South African, we need to embrace people from all walks of life so that we can sit around the same dinner table and laugh and energize and align on a common vision of building this country together, so that we can all have hope, so that we can all dream big, and that we can all be proud of the beautiful South Africa that I still believe in today.
Yeah. Tebe, final word.
I think that's an African proverb that says if you want to go anywhere, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. But to get there, as Aisha said, each and every one of us have to play our part in this great country called South Africa and the great continent called Africa. We're an amazing country. We are where we are before everything, all the mess, because we're a great people and a great country and can accomplish great things. So we've got the foundations to be great again. So we just need to go back to what made us great and to rebuild on that, and to hold everybody that we sent ahead of us accountable to come back with what we send them for.
Yeah, pertinent messages there. Thank you to all of you. Just very quickly, I suppose then in closing, particularly with regards to this discussion, I want to re-energize all of you, no matter what the frustration may be, that unfortunately doesn't get solved just by speaking.
No.
And this conversation is great. Our conversation, absolutely amazing. What do we do when we leave here? What do we do when we step out of the stadium and interact with those very same people who have those problems and issues? Quickly want to tell a story that I may have told sometimes as well before, and it goes, there was a monk who was walking around the path with a younger monk, and they were both walking along the forest actually, and the older monk was teaching the younger monk a few lessons about life and really about the monastery as well. And they got up to a river, and it was absolutely gushing with water, and it was just far too dangerous to cross. And there was, unfortunately, this old lady who was trying to cross the river, and she couldn't. And so the older monk took this lady, carried her over that river. And now the younger monk was absolutely perturbed and just couldn't understand what was happening, because you're not supposed to touch women. And so after he had dropped her off effectively, and they said their thank yous and walked on, the younger monk, about 25 minutes later, was still perturbed by this issue, and then sat back and said, I have to ask. You know very well that we're not allowed to touch women, but you went and carried that woman over the river. Why did you do that? The older monk's response was, I carried that woman 25 minutes ago. why are you still carrying her? We've carried all our past issues with us thus far, but have we resolved them? Have we taken them and said to ourselves, this is what has happened. We're not going to change that narrative, and it is no longer going to be where we as a country go to. Because once we are okay with ourselves, it's easy then for everybody to see the change in us and want to be the gateway and want us to be the gateway for them, because we give them something different, because we are different. And so the process is going to start with you and I, not just through conversations, but certainly through deeds. So again, I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation, and thank you for allowing us to share our thoughts as well. Thank you so much. Listen, over to you.
I think just to wrap up from the Lions cricket side, just parting words and just to thank the panelists as well.
Oh, sorry, folks. Let's just close off here very quickly before we exchange cards
yeah,
and
sorry about that.
pleasantries.
I work for the Lions cricket brand, which is probably one of the biggest domestic cricket infrastructure in not only South Africa, but in the continent and that. And it is a sporting currency. And I want to use that as a currency. So our gateway to Africa is definitely using sports. So yes, we're sitting with education, we're sitting with technology, we're sitting with infrastructure. But as Lions cricket, our gateway is definitely sport. And if you can understand and appreciate what sports does, not just from an economic sustainability and growth perspective, but from a unifier and that. And that's the reason and the sole purpose that I actually joined this entity and be part of the Lions cricket family and that. To serve both purposes, where it says, what do we do from a unifier perspective, from a socio-economic perspective and that, which sports definitely does touch onto that. And as you can see, and Jonah touched on that, we are massive on that in terms of the off-field activities and that bit. And that's massive. You spoke about gender-based violence and things. These are the things that are close to our hearts and saying, how do we use this currency to reach out to various communities and to address all of the social ills and that? Last night, I actually read a study, a European study. Sports is actually valued at about 650 European dollars. That's if you include, obviously, the sponsorship, the infrastructure, the economy, the education element that goes into it and that. So it's really this conversation that we're having to say the gateway to Africa. And you probably have asked, why is Lions cricket and we hosting this? It's exactly where we're saying we're not just the pride of Josie. And Jonathan alluded to it earlier. We are now trying to go into the pride of Africa. You know, we've got a new campaign that we've just launched now. One team, one stadium, one city of gold and that. He's actually now giving me the next challenge, which says one continent. And that's where we're trying to pursue and position ourselves as the Lions cricket and saying, how do we champion the cause and the economic emancipation using sports as a unifier and that. On that closing note, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. It was definitely a privilege. We are certainly honored. We know we did take up a lot of your time, and just for you just coming here and gracing us with the conversations and that. Arabile, we do value your input. Thank you very much. We also do value the contribution that's coming from our guests as well and that. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have some beautiful treats. Please, let's network, let's engage. There's some very startling conversation that we need to continue on that. On that note, thank you very much to everybody that came and just assisted on that. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This is that Richfield.